Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, where we will discuss all things that impact soccer coaching across all levels and ages. Please listen, enjoy, and share your thoughts on the discussions at the Soccer Coaching Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
How are we doing, Mark?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you.
Good stuff.
Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all. How has your footballing week been?
It's been quite good. So the season, I guess, is effectively kind of finished. We're kind of in the close season where we're getting to play friendlies and tournaments and things like that. So it feels like there's a little bit less pressure. I know there shouldn't ever be pressure in youth football, but it feels like less pressure. And you actually, we're starting to play 9-a-side friendlies, as I've kind of spoken about in the past. And it's actually going to those, kind of very much looking forward to it, seeing the new challenges it's presenting the players, allowing them to kind of experiment a little bit in different positions and things like that. So I think it feels good. It feels nice not to have the structure of league matches every week, and perhaps have that just the little bit of the competitive edge taken off them. They're still competitive, but the edge has been taken off a little bit. So it feels like it's a nice time of the year. Yeah. The weather's nicer as well. The sun's out. The pitches are getting better, so I think it's good.
It's a good time to reflect, isn't it, on everything, on the players, on the team, on the season, on yourself and things, and look forward. And for you, being a transition season from 7 to 9-a-side, that's quite exciting too, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of work actually to kind of get things right, get the little details right that we've spoken about in the past. Yeah. It's a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of kind of reflection, as you said. But yeah, it's good. It's exciting actually.
Good. Yeah. Well, for the younger ones, we're another season of 5-a-side, so not massive changes for us. It's just about keep practicing and doing the things we want to do right. But it'll be interesting to know the process you go through from transitioning from 7 to 9-a-side. I know we spoke about formations and things before, but the actual, what you do and how you approach it and how the players respond and what works for you. And maybe we'll pick that up at some point early on in next season.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And maybe we can do it actually before the end of this season, because a lot of things come into it around player streaming. Yeah. It's that time of the year where you start to assess the players you've got, and we start to talk to our other managers in our age group at the club, to see which players kind of can make the transition up, which players maybe need to kind of move the other way. So it's an interesting part, and also with the squads getting bigger and things like that, so that you need to kind of find more players. So it's a very interesting time of the year.
Well, maybe we'd do a bit about what you've done proactively, and then how that pans out in practice, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you had an interesting challenge this week, right, with the under sevens that you played a tournament. Yeah, and it was a 6-a-side tournament, so it was different to the normal setup. So you had to kind of tweak and change things a bit.
Yeah, it was. Well, I think maybe I was a bit lazy on this one, but yeah, we did. So the weekend before, we'd gone away for the weekend, and we'd had that kind of bigger, more full-on couple of days of football with the younger ones, and
I thought you might get that last weekend in. Look at that. Yeah.
I haven't mentioned we won it.
Still basking in the glory.
But my point was the fact that I don't think we would have probably chosen to do another tournament the following weekend if we'd kind of seen the dates in advance. So we kind of just went to this one because it's a good local tournament, always well run, and a good level of competition, but particularly well run, and seems to be done in the right spirit. But it was 6-a-side on bigger pitches, but we used it as an opportunity really to. We have the A, B, and the C teams, don't we? So we use an opportunity really to have one of the boys from the B team, we call them red, white, and blue, so I should probably use the right term. So red, white, and blue, from the white team, if you like, to come and join us, who's done really well. I mean, there's been a few players in that team that have done really well this season, but we used one of those, or we asked one of those players to come and join us. Yep. So it's that time of year, like you said, about looking at across the squad of players to see, what opportunities there are for players to move around and whether we've still got things right with regards to where they're currently playing. So one of those players joined us, and we had a much more relaxed approach, like you were saying. It genuinely didn't care about anything apart from the players putting some effort into it and having fun and trying to express themselves. That was the message to them. It was the effort word. I don't want to sit back and just relax and just eat ice cream and sit on a chair and watch them. I was still keen to keep good practice in place, and I think at moments I was quite vocal about that. But I wanted the effort to be there because we played tough teams on the big pitches, and I wanted the boys to keep those good habits that they've got from the season going. So yeah, it was a good challenge, but we stuck to our usual formation, if you like, and we just we asked the player that joined us, who hasn't played with us at all, just to fill in that kind of extra role in the middle. So almost like a free role in centre midfield kind of ish role. We did the 2-2 formation.
Yep.
And they just had a bit of a free role, because I thought that's quite a nice way to come and play. And
no pressure, right?
Exactly. Kind of, and that was the message, just go and play and enjoy the football. So yeah, I think because what we're going to pick up today, actually, I'm thinking about this in my head. Yeah. It's going to relate, I think, to the question that's come through. So I won't say any more about that, because I'll reflect back on it a bit in the conversation, if that's okay. Perfect, because the results and what happened, I think, might be relevant to where this conversation is going. Yeah. Sound all right?
Yeah, sounds good, yeah.
Just before we crack on with the question that's come into us, just a bit about player ownership from our last podcast we did with Michael Hamilton. We had, so again, some great feedback, really nice stuff, a little bit through Twitter, but a lot of emails actually, which has been great to see. And some people suggesting some of the things they do around player ownership and their clubs, and some great ideas that we will be stealing. But, I think we covered a lot of the stuff that's kind of more general practice, if you're looking at trying to build in some of that within your teams. But a few people have come back and said about they have their players do the final team talk at the end, which we kind of touched on about the huddles, I think we, but I don't know whether or not, we mentioned that, I don't think we do this ourselves, so we wouldn't have mentioned it that we do it. But literally letting the captain of the team lead seems quite a common one, which I really like that. I mean, it seems obvious when you say it out loud, but certainly listen to them first. I think the points was the fact that if you're the coach and you let the team go first, and particularly the captain maybe, you get a real insight to how they see the game. Yeah. And you can be surprised about what they've seen from it compared to what you may have seen from it. Doesn't mean anyone's right or wrong, but it's good to know where their head is before you then start making your comments or contributions, because it may make you rethink what you're going to say and how you're going to say it.
Yeah, I guess it might take a bit of the emotion out of the way your kind of mindset is and things like that, especially. Maybe you've conceded 2 late goals or something, and you're a little bit kind of.
You had this, didn't you?
I had this, yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. It, yeah, you're kind of a little bit overexcited, for want of a better kind of phrase, and maybe that just takes the edge off. You let the players do the talking, and then you can contribute after. You can get their views and
so double whammy, right? You're getting player ownership, and you're getting, or giving the player ownership, and you're getting some time to have a little bit of thinking space before you make your comments. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the only other one that came through, well, not the only, but there was a few, but the other one that came through, which I thought was good, was the fact that they, one of these coaches was saying that they have part of the session in which they let the players the week before choose what they want to cover in it. So they say, what do we want to work on for next week? And there's a 25-minute block that they allocate to the player's choice. Yeah. So I think that's another cracking idea, isn't it? You might give options, but if the theme's around something, you might say, what do you want to work on? So they feel they're part of that. So I guess the important thing is just about recognising player ownership can be a fundamental part of what you do, and if used wisely and rightly, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's just that engagement for me. Is that real? You're getting that engagement from the players. Yeah.
So, and start it early, right? I mean, just again, I think maybe we'll come on to this a little bit later, but it is about trying to start it as early as you can, so you put those habits in as early, and the players feel like, actually, what the sessions, I'm an important part of this. It's not just the coaches show and all about the coaches, and they don't get in those habits of leaning on the coaches too early, too quickly. Yep. Yeah. But today's episode and today's question is kind of we put it to you, because actually when the question came into us, this was something that I know we'd spoke about, ironically, maybe a day or two before anyway, in and around it. So are you happy to share the question?
Yeah. So the question's coming from a guy called Steve Jones. His question is it good for my foundation team to be undefeated all season? And it is something that I've kind of definitely been kind of contemplating. And
an unbeaten season.
Well, unfortunately it wasn't unbeaten. The reason I contemplated this, actually, there was 2 things actually. One, there was a local team that we've played in the past, my team's played in the past, and they beat us fairly comfortably, actually. They were stronger than us technically and physically, so my team put up a really good fight. It was a good game, but they were just the better team, right? And sometimes that happens. You play better teams that probably are in the wrong division, probably should be in a different group, so you kind of just take that on the chin. There's not too much you can do. It's a great challenge for the players. Anyway, so I'd kind of tracked this team, and I'd kind of joined their Twitter feed and various other things. And I noticed that after a year, the manager had put on Twitter to say that they were undefeated for the whole year, for the whole of the 12 months. And interestingly, I also had noticed that despite beating us in that match, as I said, it was quite convincing. we had gone up a group the next season because we had done well in the rest of our games, but they had stayed in the same group. Now, my belief is they'd probably requested to stay where they are because obviously this is not meant to be competitive football. You don't see results and things like that, and you can ask to be in different leagues. So my view is that the league will decide where we go based on our results. But I think this team had obviously requested to stay in the same division because they clearly had won every game they'd played. So it kind of thought to me, and I thought to myself, look, obviously the coach is making himself feel good about it, about the fact that they haven't lost a game for 12 months. But actually, are you really doing your players justice by the approach that he's taken? So that's really where I was starting to think about it. So this was like a perfect kind of question that had come in.
Yeah, it is a good question, and it does probably open up the whole different kind of conversations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first thoughts are, it's not a yes or no answer, is it?
Yeah, no.
100%. It raises that problem about winning not being the issue. It's not about winning or losing because that's not the issue here.
Yeah.
And what we don't know about the team, even though you know the team a little bit more, what we don't know is obviously the players, the coach, the circumstances in which they operate, and how tough those games were that they played in during that 12-month period.
Yep.
I think the problem is the metric of measuring the metric of a result in football, the scoreline, as a measurement of how well you're doing in youth development or foundation phase football doesn't work. If my red team plays your blue team next week, and
just to be clear, your red team are technically stronger than my blue team.
Let's say it's day one, week one. Okay, and we play each other, and it's all pretty even. And we play each other. We have a good 5-5 result.
Yeah.
Now for the next 3 months, you keep your philosophy, player rotation, equal playing time, players played every position. Your coaching sessions are all about that as well. Me, I know who my best goalkeeper is, so Little Jim is going to go in goal. I know my best back player, defender, is going to go there. So I firm things up. We keep working on that. Little Dylan's not good enough. He's out now. He's gone. I found another boy from 25 miles away that's going to come over and join us because he's brilliant. He's going to be in his next thing. So we play each other 2 months later. I beat you. Okay, we're not a million miles ahead, but I beat you 6-3. Okay, hey, look at me. What a coach I am. All right. Yeah. And we go up another 6 months time, and you know what? I play you again, and actually maybe one of my players has left. Maybe I have a bad day at the office where the players don't turn up. You guys improve, and this one's it's a 3-3 draw. Yeah. And then we play again 6 months later, and I got my players back in and beat you, and now it's 7-2 to me now. The point is, it's nonsense. Yeah. It's completely nonsense. You're comparing apples and oranges. It doesn't mean anything. And that's the same teams playing each other in inverted commas. Yeah. Because, at the recreational grassroots level, at your youth and foundation phase, one team's never the same team. Yeah. Even if it is the same team, because these are kids, so their performances change from week to week. We know the development's not linear, so that doesn't mean anything either. The only way in which you could really use the metric of a result as a comparison to how well you're doing is by working closely with other managers. Yeah. So you have some consistency in the players you put out there and how they play or not, depending on what you agree to do. So you kind of get a real understanding of who you're playing against and what that is. The only other way of doing it without having that relationship with the other coach is to be able to see through the nonsense of the scoreline and look at the game and ask yourself 2 questions. Yeah. How well are we dominating this opposition that we face today with and without the ball? Yeah. And that's it. And whether you're winning 20-0 or losing 20-0 does not matter one iota. Okay. What matters is how well you are dominating the game with or without the ball in relation to the opposition you can see. Now, you need to be able to then qualify, okay, how good are these players I'm playing against? Have they got one style? Are they dominating when they're on the pitch? Are they rotating their players around? Are they mixing their keepers up? All that kind of stuff. And how good are they? And be honest about your performance. And I will shut up in a second, I promise you. Yeah. It comes back to the tournament that we played at the weekend. And we played 4 games in that tournament. Little 12-minute matches, 6 aside, under 7s. So let's put it into the context, okay? No real pressure apart from our players, apart from playing effort. But all the teams we played against would be considered the top local the top teams in the area, right? Ish. Yeah. Certainly academies, all that kind of thing. So these are kind of, if you like, the best-ish players of that age group around we're playing against. Absolutely fine. We won 3, lost 1, and the one we lost was a narrow game 1-0. Yeah. the scorelines are nonsense.
Yeah.
What I walked away knowing was the first 2 games we dominated with or without the ball, and we were fine.
Yeah.
Again, the scorelines doesn't matter; it doesn't make a difference. But we did dominate that.
Yeah.
The third game, we were outplayed by the other team. They were better than us, with and without the ball. Better.
Yeah.
We won it 1-0.
Yeah.
I'm not celebrating a 1-0 win.
Yeah,
we were outplayed by that team. My thought is now, geez, how can I get these boys to be better, as good as these guys were? Now, because they were a good team, they were brilliant. All those boys play a Premier League academy.
Yeah.
They're all ours don't do that, which is fine. But that's my change. I've no issue. They play the right spirit, good lads, good coaches.
Yeah.
No issue one little bit. We won it 1-0. I'm pretty confident they're not freaked out by the result of losing to us 1-0.
Yeah.
But they were the better team. We just rode our luck and we just had a bit of a smash and grab and could put a goal away at the end.
Exactly.
The final game, we actually lost 1-0. We did all right. I thought we were quite even. They're a good team as well. I like the way they coached and everything else. The team lost, but I was okay with that. There no surprises there. So this is where I think we've got to get better as coaches at trying to say let's see through the nonsense and see the game for what it is.
Yeah.
And my final point will just be on this one about the question from Steve, and the question more generally is the fact that the danger is when you start focusing on your unbeaten record, you start making bad choices because you don't want to lose games, and none of us want to lose games. I totally understand that. Yeah. But when you kind of go, it'd be nice to go, and we've been there, it'd be nice to go another month and see this out and not have lost any games and things. So you start compromising those development things, and that's the danger here.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult to really answer this question without the whole context of what's behind it. So it'd be interesting to get that more information. But I think I totally agree that I don't think it's a good thing, to be honest, to go the whole season undefeated. And I think for a number of reasons, exactly the things that you've said there. I think that teams that do that are more than likely not rotating positions. They're not changing goalkeepers. They're not giving all of their players a chance to play in goal and show what they can do in goal. They're probably haven't got equal game time, those kind of things. So I think for longer term development, it's not a good thing. But also I think that, and for me this is an important thing, that you need to play matches, they've got to be competitive. I don't think anyone gets anything out of winning 10-0 or playing teams that are not at a similar level. Now, and you're not going to get it every week because, as you say, you could play a team actually that you normally play, it's very competitive, but this week they got 2 players out or they got a lot of sickness. But in general, I think you need to be playing competitive games. And then that side, I think even if you're not playing competitive games, it's a responsibility for that coach to find ways to challenge the players. And that could be you have to make, 5 passes before you score. You could only score from inside the area. You obviously need to be a bit respectful to the opposition, but you need to kind of then challenge the players in that kind of situation. And that may mean that you can see goals, or it may mean that you don't win the game. And probably there's more learning from that than just playing the game and winning it, right? I think that's the critical thing. Let me just put one question.
Can I hold on?
You come back
and then do the question. So I do disagree slightly.
Okay.
So it's bad to go undefeated. And you're right, we don't know the context of these things. I mean, they could have had full rotation. Yeah. They could have had full equal playing time. And they could be doing challenges. Yeah. What I would say, if they're doing challenges, they're probably doing it when they're already winning comfortably by a few goals. So so that wouldn't make them not win a game. Yeah. But again, it's the context of winning. Now, they might have gone unbeaten all season or for 12 months. But did they dominate the game with them without the ball, or did they weigh the luck at times? Yeah. Or like the way that the other teams up against them doing all the things that we might consider the right things with the rotation, like meant that actually that was their sacrifice against this team that wasn't necessarily doing the right things, possibly, and that cost them the result. But it is possible that they went the whole season, and you don't know what you're up against sometimes, do you? Yeah. So like you might be okay. Yes, we started off here, and that was definitely too weak, and we've gone to the next division up, and we're still smashing it, and we've looked for other teams, and we're still smashing it, and we're doing all these things, and we're still going on there. They may just not have found their level just yet. And obviously part of that over here happens a little bit when we get to under 9s and the academy players sign the players, and then grassroots becomes a bit more of a level playing field-ish. Yeah. So I'm not sure what age group this is, but that might be part of the problem there as well. So like we don't want to be disrespectful and say, you know what, just because they went undefeated for 12 months didn't mean they weren't taking development opportunities, because they may well have been. Yeah, fair point. But in many cases, when you see coaches that are precious about an unbeaten record, I'm not saying Steve is here one little bit, but if you are precious about your unbeaten record, that can come at sacrifice of making good choices around development, can't it? And I think that's the point. And it's fair to say that the challenging, I totally agree with, but I've never seen a coach make challenges to their own team until they're winning comfortably.
You're right. I think they're fair points, and I think probably, as you say, you get to under 8s or under 9s where leagues start to settle down a bit. That first season at under 7s in England, it's kind of all over the place, right? We've seen it this year where you have sides that are in the top group, which probably should be further down because it's just that's the ability they're at, and you see sides which start at the bottom because they want to win games and then they kind of work their way up.
I'll hold my hands up. When we got this young team together at under 6s, we were looking for friendly games, and bear in mind, I wanted to be a pleasant experience, and I wanted to find coaches that wanted to have a pleasant experience and not this kind of win at all cost mentality. I sent out emails and requests to play against teams that were worded quite nicely. The problem was, I think it gravitated towards clubs whose teams weren't particularly strong. Now, we had a strong team trying to play against nice other teams. Unfortunately, what happened was the nice other teams weren't particularly strong teams. So we were winning ridiculous scorelines, and it's no disrespect to the other team. We were just better at that moment in time for them, and it was hard, and you couldn't rein these kids back in. It was really hard, and it felt really flat. It was. I'm not going to say it was as bad as losing, but it almost was as bad as losing when you go and beat a team 15-0, you know, and you got all the players back and and they've got all their subs on the pitch, and it wasn't what we wanted to do. So it is hard, isn't it, when you set out from the outset?
I totally agree, and again, we don't know the context in terms of the age group and things like that. I think definitely for under 6s, under 7s, it's the start of the whole kind of process. I think it's a little bit different. I think you almost make an exception there. I think once you get to under 8s, when you start to become more established,
you know where you're at.
And I think, look, if you're the top team in Group A of a particular league, and you win all your games, and you still have all these things, then absolutely, there's not much more you can do, right? I'm sure there's if you're still doing all these right practices. So I think my kind of comment is more around the general approach where teams look to play weaker teams just to win. They're very structured in how they go about it. That's, I think, where I'm coming from. But yeah, you're absolutely right. My question to you is, and there's a lot of talk about this, I think, in the adult game, is around winning mentality and winning games. Kind of gives confidence. It kind of makes the players better, or it makes them feel better, and they can express themselves more. And you certainly see that. I know when I watch QPR play, when in the few times where they're on a good,
the opposite,
exactly, and the few times they're on a kind of a winning run, you can just see how confident the players are, and they do things that they wouldn't do, or there's less pressure, so they'll be able to just control it. They kill the ball, and then they kind of play. I just wondered, do you think that ever applies to foundation phase football?
Great question. I don't think it does. I think honestly, and I think this is where we, as adults, can forget what it's like to be kids.
Yeah,
you know, and I fully appreciate probably post-puberty, confidence probably correlates a lot closer to success. But I just think kids, because of what life throws at kids, and their whole learning and growing stuff, I think they're just wired in a way in which they can't have that correlation as closely, because they can be broken by the time they're 10. They don't care. You see them on the playground, they don't care. They care in the moment. It means a lot. There can be tears about the goal that didn't go in or hit the bar, whatever, in the playground. But 30 seconds later, it's done, and they're on to the next thing. I don't think it's as big a deal as we think it is, because we probably forgot what it's like to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, because it was a while back for us. So I'm not sure that it does, and I think we get obsessed as coaches, say, well, let's go keep the confidence up, keep the spirits going. And I've seen teams, some teams we're involved with, that have looked great for 2 or 3 weeks on their trot and confidence flying, and then they go and hit a wall. I think it's the ability to recognise who you're playing against and be honest with the team about that. So if you go out and you play a game, and you say to your players, look, yes, want to win it and everything else, do these things, but the result, forget about the result. We'll talk about it at the end, okay? And the game goes, and your team struggles to dominate with or without the ball, and you lose the game because the other team are better, But actually, every one of your players has done their best, or ish, and you've had a go, and the scoreline isn't ridiculous, and you've created opportunities, and you've stopped shots, and you've done some great recovery runs and things. Well, there's some wins in that, isn't there? And that's the point, where you could play another team the next week who you thump 10-0 because they're not very good, at that moment in time. You've played the same way you played the week before. Maybe you played really well still, but you played the same week, but the opposition weren't as good this week. So what, you're going to get carried away now suddenly you're the next Barcelona? It's just, and you say to the players, look, you've done great, but let's be honest, these opposition probably weren't at our level. Yeah. So, yes, well done for finishing your chances and reducing their chances, but but what could we have done even better? Could we communicate more? Could we have shared the ball more? Could we, it's seeing that stuff. And I know it's hard, but we have an obligation as coaches in the foundation and youth development phase, I think, to see past the nonsense of the scoreline and see the game for what it is. And then where possible, encourage our players to do the same. Yep. Not taking away the desire to want to win. And I've never played a game where I've not wanted to win, and I don't think I ever will. Yeah. But the question is how much I'm going to compromise for that result, making choices around the development of the players. Yeah. I've got a question for you.
Yeah, I just can just say one. Just come back to just one sec on the winning mentality. I totally agree, actually, and the reason I say that is if you just think back when we had the under-10 team that I kind of coach at the moment at under-7s, we were smashed most weeks, right? It's fair to say, mostly because our coaching wasn't at the level it should be, and we didn't do the right things at the time to get the players ready to play matches. I'm happy to say that. And do you know what? They walked off that pitch. They wouldn't be like crying. They were just going to get on with it. We would do man of the match. They'd be delighted with that, and they would all go off smiling their faces. They'd come back the next week at training. There would be no kind of disappointment, really, right?
It's a really good point you make, because there's a few things in that one. You're dead right. First and foremost, we didn't know what we were doing back then. I think we hadn't coached the grassroots football that age group ever before, so we didn't really know what good looked like, did we? Yeah, exactly. So what we did do, though, and I think this is where we've kept some of this good practice and added on some more experience and knowledge about coaching at that level, is we created a positive environment. We did. Yeah. Our attendance was phenomenal for coaching the matches. Yep. Everyone wanted to play every week. We were getting thumped and still wanted to come and play because we had more players than we needed, so we rested those. If a player couldn't make because they were poorly or ill, and it was the only time players didn't come, sometimes we're desperate to fill that place. Yeah. Attendance for training sessions, whether it's midweek or the Saturdays, would be the extra session on. No one ever missed a training session. Yeah, and I'm proud of that. And it shows you actually that the kids didn't care about the success of the games. There wasn't any success in the games. Yeah. In fact, the one team I think we did beat in our first half of our first season, I felt sorry for because they were making the same mistakes we were making, weren't they? And it was like it wasn't even like we beat them, and it was like when you beat them, because actually you're just slightly worse than what we were, not because we were better than you. With all respect to them. And it shows you. And again, we'll come on to a parent conversation later, I'm sure, in another episode. But the only kids where it might have mattered a little bit more than maybe it should do were the ones where it did to their parents. Yeah. Now to be fair, they're cracking parents in that team, and there was a couple of little bumps in the early days, but that was all part of it. And we were finding our feet, and they were finding theirs for sure. But nothing, certainly no car crashes. And it's only because the parents cared. But the only kids that kind of got a bit bothered are the ones where the parents did, and that soon got put to bed as well. Yeah, so
agree totally. Yeah,
it's a good example of actually, you know what. Is the kids don't really care as much about that. They just want to play football and have fun and get better and learn and stuff. And we've got obligations to try and make that process as effective as possible, right? Yeah. By being better, we can do. But I don't think the kids do. The parents do. Still, parents, I think. Do. Yeah. Still do, Well, my question to you would be, if we're kind of lining up similar here, it sounds like, should you start then looking at domination first? So if we've got a team, should we, the first thing we've got to do is go out and be competitive. That's the first thing. So let's go tried and tested. Let's go strongest players, strongest positions. Let's do that. And where the game allows, we'll rein back from there.
So my viewpoint, and I don't necessarily practice this, by the way, but I think my viewpoint is...
We don't practice anything that we preach.
is if I was starting out with an under-6, under-7s team, I would... And I think this is your approach. I would approach it. My view is that for this match, this season, we're rotating players between positions, between sides, goalkeeper. We're keeping it fair in terms of the time on the pitch. We're keeping it fair in terms of how long you get in goal each week. You might not be exactly the same, but over the season, it should average itself out. I think that should be the default option, and I think that is what grassroots clubs, should be telling their coaches when they walk through the door at under 5s or under 6s, and most of these coaches are parents, right, that are picking up with kind of maybe it's just experience of playing football. The clubs should be having that in their manifestos to say, this is our approach at X club, this is what you should be doing. And if you can't do this, then we will need to find another coach, because it's not fair to the players that we've got. If you don't do that, you're not doing them justice. That's what I think the default option should be.
Yeah.
Now, I don't. That's not what I follow for my under-10s, to be perfectly honest. And the reason is I never adopted that on day one. I think if you adopt it on day one, when you get to under-10s, under-9s, you can still do that. I think you become a little bit more structured, maybe, but you can do that. And if you've got players that are technically good enough, that you can certainly do that. I think the challenge is, if you haven't done that from the outset, then introducing that a few years later is hard, because I just don't think you'd be competitive in matches. And I think there's an element that you still want to be competitive. I rotate positions where I can, for sure. I've got most of my players play 2 or 3 positions, but
it's under-10s.
It's under-10s. But do they all play in goal, for example, only if the game ever allows? And my team
got them all in goal.
Yeah, exactly. Goal, yeah. Might have 9 in goal next season. So that's my kind of approach. I don't think the approach that I adopt is the right approach, but it's just where I am in terms of...
It's not easy though, is it? I mean, it's not a loaded question, and I mean it, and we see it a lot. And you're right, because we've had the benefit now of having the older group where, you know, we've learnt as we've gone with them.
Yeah.
And bless them, they had to go on the journey with us.
Yeah. And they're still there, by the way.
And they're still there, and they're improving, and there's, you know, and they're playing some good football and doing the right things. But it's been a learning process. I think the environment's always been good, but the actual quality of the coaching and what we've done with the players, or what you've done with them more recently, is you know, has improved significantly from the days when I was helping you.
Yeah, well, definitely the quality of coaching definitely improved after you left, to be honest. And actually, just say one thing. Actually, one of my
edit this out, you know.
Yeah, I know. One of my most proudest moments was recently in Bournemouth when we played our A team.
I was going to say this,
and it was a perfect result, really, because the A team beat us, which the A team got aspirations of winning that tournament, and they went on to do very well. My B team obviously want to win that tournament, but probably wouldn't win it because just the strength of the other teams. Yeah. And we put a magnificent fight up against them. We were a little bit more structured in terms of our positions and who played, but we put up a great fight. We played some really good football. I thought we played some good football on the day, and we lost 1-0. Could have been a different score under different circumstances if we'd taken a chance. I know they had chances as well.
But what was great, from a footballing point of view, both teams played really nice football.
They did, yeah.
You know, like, and there were moments when you wouldn't know, like, some of the football the B team played was 18 football. If you know, if there's such a thing as 18 football, you know, some really, really good stuff, and that's testimony to all the work that's gone in. And considering the starting point they had, and and you know, for lots of different variables, but where they were, you know, that is, you're dead right to mention that as a proud moment, and shows you what you can do with hard work and the right messages and stuff. But it is harder to do it later, and having the younger ones and starting off, you know, better than what you've done with the older ones, it shows you that it's easier, right? It certainly is easier doing it with stronger players for the age that they're at, and having the process in place from the outset, I think is good. My slight worry is, and I don't know this, but just anecdotally, that the message that's gone out from, particularly in England, from the FA around, you know, from Pete Sturgis and all the DNA stuff, is great messages. And I think most people, you can argue with it and you take it on. I still think the default position is kind of, get it, want to do it, but we're going to start off here with the kind of, we're going to be competitive and wants to try and win first. And I mean, by looking at the result first, and then where we can, we'll allow for some other stuff to creep in where we can do that. And that's what I feel we're still at a little bit. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to coaches out there that will try and do a great job, but I think if you took percentage wise, I would say that the majority is still, you know, if they've converted at all to a development long-term view, then that's probably their approach around it. And what we face most weekends against teams is pretty much that. Although, to be fair, I've seen more good practice in what I would consider good practice around player rotation, equal playing time, and working with other coaches this season than I've seen over the last 5 seasons.
And different goalkeepers, right?
Different keepers, 100%. You know, and I think, you know, where I've kind of always thought, we're well ahead of the curve on this stuff. And yes, it comes at a cost sometimes with regards to the results of the games, but we know we're doing the right thing. I think other teams are doing more of this stuff now, and we're seeing more of it. I think they are, and I think it'd be interesting to see how it moves forward when you get to under 8s, because I think under 7s is still, I think it's still, they're seen as young
young players, and they are young players, even under 8s, under 9s, under 10s. They're still very young players. But I just think as you go up the age groups, it's going to get a little bit more serious, a bit more competitive, especially at five-a-side where the boys get a bit more bigger. They're a bit more tactically switched on. I just think it will just get a little bit more competitive. And maybe under 9s it might change when the academy players get signed and you go to bigger pitches again. But I think then it'd be interesting. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
The problem you've got, I think, is what happens is it only takes one or two teams, doesn't it, to kind of dig their heels a little bit and make some bad choices, and then it has a bit of a domino effect, doesn't it? It does, because it's quite claustrophobic, isn't it? Grassroots football, you kind of play in the same kind of space against the same teams, and after 2 or 3 seasons, suddenly those results start to mean a lot more than they should mean. Yeah. My crystal ball prediction for our little young team is this: I think we'll really struggle next season. I think we'll really struggle. I think we've had the benefit of everyone starting off really under 7s.
Yeah.
And having some good players and doing the right things. And although it's cost us here and there your goal and stuff with all the rotation or whatever else, and we could have been stronger in games by doing things a bit differently, but that's fine. I think what will happen next season is the second season of 5-a-side football. Other teams, generally speaking, will be a bit more fixed in positions. Those players will have better understood the role they've got within that team in the short term. They will have goalkeepers.
Yes.
They will have strengthened by finding players a bit further afield, which we won't do.
Yeah.
You know, and different things. And I think we'll have on the curve, we'll dip down, I think, with the hope being that come the 7-a-side footballer under 9s, when things balance out again and our longer term 2-season plus philosophy will pay off, where our players will be able to dominate again on the bigger pitch, full rotation, different goalkeepers, using the keeper more wisely and things like that. I think that'll come into play more, and the benefits of a tough season and what we did this season will come to fruition more under 9s and into under 10s. That's my little prediction. I think we'll struggle next season for 1 year, and my job there is to kind of keep the players positive, understand what we're doing and the challenges, as well as the parents, and get the buy-in there and make sure people understand why some of the stuff we're doing won't bear fruit in the next 6 months, but it will in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see how it pans out. I think
our job's not to win games, is it? I mean, this is my point, and this is the thing that we said it on the Final Four last week.
Yeah.
It was, it's not to win games, and you know what? It doesn't mean we don't want to win games, but that's not the priority here. Yeah. And if it's going to become the priority, I'm not going to do your son or daughter any favours. I'm honestly not. Even if whether they're the best player in the squad or the worst player, if my approach is to win games every week, I will not be helping your kid. It won't work that way. Trust me, it won't. Because you'll tell me little Jimmy is the star striker and can score 100 goals a season, and I'm sure he can. But if he never gets to go to playing goal or at the back or in midfield, I am not helping his long-term development. At some point in the future, whether it's in 6 months or 6 years' time, he'll run into a wall, and it'll be my fault if I haven't done the right things for them.
Yeah, I think winning is just a really nice byproduct, right, of having a good process, having a good setup, having all these right things that you do in terms of rotating positions. I think that's what it's all about. I think the other point is, I think as a coach, you've got to want to win, and you've got to want your players to win. That's for sure. But it is about the development over anything else. And I think the example you gave earlier, where you spoke about the tournament, and I think the third team we played, I put myself in there as we won 1-0, but they were by far the better team, and you weren't very happy with that. But yet the last game we lost 1-0, and I thought we were the better team, and we played much better football both individually and as a team, and we lost 1-0. You walked away with more satisfaction in that last game than you did with the game that you won, the game we lost, right? The game that we won 1-0.
Yeah. Well, I think I gave the players a bit of a rollicking after the game, not in a nasty way, but making the point that, forget about the result. You got to have the effort. The whole keeper's effort was there, and our little goalkeeper made loads of good saves. And my point to the players was, do we want our goalkeeper making loads of good saves for us? Yeah. What do we want our goalkeeper? We're not being bored out, bored. We want him just using his feet and playing football with his feet, not making saves. Because, and although they were really good, to be fair, the other team, part of the reason they were so good, I thought, was because we didn't impose our game on them. Now I get these are 6 and 7 year olds, so let's not get on Mourinho about it. But but the ultimate, it's life skills for them. If you want to be able to demonstrate how good you are at something in an opposed environment, the opposition aren't going to let you. You've also got to have the intrinsic motivation, the effort, desire, determination, all that stuff to want to be able to put those techniques you've got into practice that then become a skill, because it's not a skill until you can do it against the best of the best, right? Really, it's just a technique, you know, and doing technique against weak opposition is still just a technique. You know, it becomes a skill when you can challenge it up against better players. And I hadn't thought about that, because I'm sure I've got that timing right with when I said that, had a bit of got the boys in, had a chat. And please, I was not shouting or having a go at them. I was just making the point about how important effort is. And even though we actually lost the final game, the effort was much better.
It was, totally agree.
And to me, that was the win. And it is about using that metric differently. And it's hard. It is hard as coaches, and it's especially hard as parents who don't, you know, with all respect to them, they don't do all this stuff. They're not, you know, they're not reading the books and listening to podcasts and going on the coaching courses, and neither should they. So it's our job to try and condense this stuff in a way in which we can get across to them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the benefits for their child, because that's all they really care about. Let's be honest, it's their child first in the team, which is fair, about 100%. That's fair enough. You know, but if you can say to them, actually, do you know what? Why we're not playing little Jimmy up front every single week and get 100 goals for us and everything else is because actually we know if they can understand how a goalkeeper thinks and works, how a back player defends and does things, it would improve their physical literacy, their body shape, their game intelligence, their understanding. And who knows when they go through puberty how they're going to develop and what kind of player they're going to be. Psychologically, physically, emotionally, we've got no idea. So I think, you know, is it the draft for the NFL? You know, the billions that get spent on selecting the players, you know, and it's you know, they don't always get that right by any stretch of imagination. So the whole crystal ball thing is nonsense, and we are just parent grassroots coaches, and you know, so let's get over ourselves. We've got a cat and hell's chance of getting it right, really. So all you can do is do your best to develop everyone in the best way you possibly can.
And I think if you've got a player that's actually that good, they'll be taken out of your hands anyway from grassroots when they get to under 9. So, and
what will they do in the academy? Play everywhere. Apart from in goal, actually, which I think is a mistake academies make. I'll be honest with you, but they will. Academies don't put them in one position. They won't. They'll be asked to play everywhere. So why do we think we have to do it under 7s, under 8s, and 9s, or even under 10s, 11s, 12s? When, you know, if they were good enough to be at the top level, well, they wouldn't do that. And one of the reasons is the fact that actually academies don't worry about winning games as much as grassroots clubs do, and that's an irony in itself, isn't it? But that's the reality of it all. And I do think it's a fair point that we have a tougher job in some ways, in the sense that we're trying to develop players, build teams, and stay competitive. Where actually, if you go into academy where you kind of got great resources in many cases, and you great facilities, and, you know, arguably the best players of that age group, you know, but there's no pressure to win games most of the time.
But I think the parents take a different viewpoint, right? When they're in the academies, I guess parents maybe want to be a little bit more quieter. Just think they don't want to stand out.
The badge speaks, doesn't it? Exactly, so yeah. And that's what I think. It's a good point, Mark. Because actually, I think as grassroots coaches, you know, and it's right. It's not the initials on your shirt or your level 1 badge or your coach name on your back of your jacket. That's, you know, that is nonsense. We can all go and buy one of those off eBay if you really wanted one of those. It's about how much time you invest in yourself, in developing your understanding of what you want to be and the coach you are, and then articulating that to your parents. Then they get some confidence in you and trust you a little bit, you know, because parents won't necessarily just trust another parent coach because they've done a level 1 course or level 2 course, whatever else it might be. But actually, if you can speak articulately and have done your research and good grounds, and you communicate that in a way that, you know, parents at least give you the opportunity then to see it in practice, then you've got much more chance of getting some of this stuff through. But those coaches that either A, don't do all that stuff, or B, don't communicate to the parents, they do leave themselves exposed to being challenged back, which can then create other problems, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. One question, I don't you know the answer to this, but and maybe it'd be interesting. Perhaps some of the listeners might be able to kind of drop us a line on it. Do you think that the kind of this winning culture that we see a lot in the UK, do you think that manifests in other countries? So like in the US, for example, in Spain, France, do you think they, at grassroots level, they have the same mentality? Because it's just, that's what human nature is. Human nature is, we want to win, we want to be the best.
It's competition, it's sport, isn't it?
Competition. Or do you think actually it's a very different approach in other countries?
Well, from the feedback we've had, which is mainly from the UK or from the States, is it sounds like it's very similar. If I'm honest with you, and I don't know this, but it sounds like it's as bad, if not worse, in America. But it does sound like we're in a very similar place. The Europeans sound like it might be a bit different, but maybe not a million miles away. But again, what I would say is, the problem isn't the winning. The problem is how much coaches are willing to commit to that long-term development decisions, that may jeopardise the result. So I don't think having a win, because I think in Spain, they've always played competitive football. The worst thing the FA ever suggested was this term non-competitive. Because there's no such thing, and it defeats the point. What it should be is just child-centred, or at least age appropriately centred. Competition. So, and I think what they do in Europe pretty well, from what I've seen from seeing particularly the Spanish teams, is oh my god, do they compete? They are tigers. At under fives, they are tigers. They are at you, they're on you, whatever else. But they're playing football. They're not kicking the ball long. They're all playing. They're all at it. They're on there. So yes, they're trying. Yes, they want to win the game and they're going to compete. But they're trying to do it in the ways in which you can see why technically they will become very proficient football players as they progress through the age groups. What they're not doing is shortchanging those players just to get a win over some team, because actually, what, that's my coach's ego there, my trophy cabinet full up. I'm sitting there looking at 3 trophies that my boy's got. Upstairs in my older boy's room, he must have 30 trophies. He's only just 10. Yeah, 30 trophies. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah. So, the nonsense you get around playing football is crazy. You've got to see through the rubbish and just see, actually, do you know what? Individually and collectively, can our players dominate with and without the ball? Let's keep working on that. Can we challenge ourselves against better teams every few months, because that's where we're getting better by doing all these right things around that? And I think that there's still a lot of education to be done, probably in the UK and the States, for coaches around embracing some more of that and helping the parents understand that, and not having winning as a bad word, but just making sure the result doesn't become the thing you fixate on more than the players you've got in front of you.
Yeah, I think...
Bit of a rant, that, wasn't it?
It was a bit of a rant. It was almost like the final thought, to be honest.
Oh, well, there you go. As we segue in nicely. Have you got a final thought this week?
I have a final thought.
Oh, there we go.
Do you think, just before we get to the final thought, do you think we've kind of... Steve's question was a great question.
We went everywhere, didn't we?
We've kind of gone off on tangents and come back. I think we've pretty much answered it. I think the feeling that I get from our response is that it's difficult to answer without the context of what the team is and things like that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if you do the right things by the players and make it a completely player-centred approach.
I'm going to be controversial now and just say, do you know what? I think the answer is it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
To be honest with you, I've always said it doesn't matter. The question, if I could meet Steve, or whoever, was it Steve's actual team?
Steve, his team.
My question, okay, how many games did you play out of interest? So let's say it was 30 games. Right? Out of those 30 games, how many out of those games did your team dominate with and without the ball? Yeah. Well, was it all of them, or was none of them, or some of them? Okay, if it's all of them, what level are you playing at then? Because if you really dominate every game, then you need to find a higher level to play at. That's my point. And at what point did you start not dominating games with without the ball? Because then the result will probably come with that as well. I don't think the win, lose, or draw bit actually matters. And unless we were to watch every one of Steve's games, you can't really qualify it, can you? And that's the point. And and that's where the metric doesn't work for the result. And it's about having to see the games. Obviously, we can't see the games, but the metric does work for the local press. It does work for the club sometimes. It does work for parents when they're bringing players in. And with all respect to Steve, and there'll be a lot of parents maybe in and around where he is that might want to bring their boys or girls to his team because actually he's a winning coach. So. I just for coaches, I wouldn't. For parents, I wouldn't ask if my kid was starting a football. I would not be asking the coach about their win-loss record. I would be asking how many positions my boy's going to play in over the next 6 months. How many chances he's going to get to go in goal. Whether they do equal playing time. Whether they have free play as part of their sessions, where the player ownership comes from. I'd ask those questions, I think, about as coaches. And not to sound arrogant about this, but I would, because that's the stuff I believe has real value to the player's development, And I would look at the environment in which they created. I would look at how much they shout from the touch lines, and I'd want to feel that. The last thing I would look at is their win-loss record.
I think that's
like another rant, wouldn't it?
I've
got sharp.
Right.
Now you got a final thought then.
Yeah, so look, it's just going to... My final thought is building on, actually, to what we've said, and I'll be honest with you, we kind of covered this quite a lot in the discussion. I didn't think we would kind of get into all this detail. As I said, it was quite an off-the-cuff kind of a discussion this time. But I think that really coaches, and especially coaches in the foundation phase and very much in the early years, kind of under 5s, under 6, under 7s especially, but it applies to all foundation phase coaches, really commit to the longer term development. It's really, really important of their players. I think if you're too structured in your approach in terms of how you rotate players, whether you play them on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, whether you kind of play them in goal, give them equal game time. I think it's just you really undersell the players. You don't do them justice if you don't get these things embedded at a really young age. So they're playing all these different positions and different learnings, different experience for them. I think that is just critical, and that's something I think that's almost like the next step for the England DNA is really to start pushing that even more to grassroots football.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it's funny because that whole rotation thing, I know it's been around for a while, but I don't think it's done enough. And I do understand how it becomes harder to do sometimes when other teams don't do it. Particularly with goalkeepers.
Yeah.
But you know what I've realised, and I was thinking, we'll swallow the five-a-side seasons, 7s and 8s, and when we get to 9s, we'll get a goalkeeper in place. Because I don't feel as bad looking for an under 9 goalkeeper. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Yeah. And I was telling myself that actually, if we do that, what I will do to justify it in my own head and stick to my principles is I would say that actually the keeper that we get in place that wants to be a goalkeeper, that's great, that wants to play in goal, will also play half a game on pitch every game as well. So they wouldn't ever just be a keeper with us. That's the kind of way I would justify it to myself. Yeah. Probably still nonsense. But what I think more now is actually, because the goal sizes don't change from 5-a-side to 7-a-side, they're still 12-by-6 goals. Yeah. But because I would like our team to use the keeper as an outfield player when we've got possession of the ball, especially, I'm not that bothered right now as I sit here. I'm honestly not that bothered, because the goal doesn't get any bigger, the players will get bigger, and if we're going to use their feet anyway, well, we've got cracking players that are good with their feet. I don't necessarily want to have a player that can make loads of saves in the game. I don't want to have loads of shots in the game. If I'm honest with you. I don't want that. Yeah. So it seems crazy. And actually, if I'm relying on a wonderful goalkeeper, I'm just it's a false economy to my teams that obviously aren't dominating without the ball, are they then? Yeah. So I'm not doing the other stuff right as a coach or supporting. So the keeper one on that rotation, I think, is fundamental. And I'm saying this now knowing full well I've not gone through the process. So, it's all right for me to get on my high horse right now, but, I could be eating my words in 6 months' time. But I just think that actually the worst time not having a goalkeeper is now, because, we always expect none of the boys are goalkeepers, even the good ones, you can go for their legs and things because that's, the little ones, it's hard. And actually it's not shot stopping that's the issue with goalkeeping. It's all the other stuff that goes around. The ball's going across from corners, things like that. It's all the silly things that goalkeepers are hard. It's the shot stopping is a bit they all like to do. But so for me, all the positions definitely, but the more you can just mix it up and also understand, parents need to understand the fact that, to be a quality striker, you got to know how defenders think, how goalkeepers think, To be a quality defender, you've got to know how a striker thinks, how they move their body and stuff. And me and you were at an academy a week or two ago, and under eights player said to me, we were doing an attacking practice, an overload. And he goes, I don't like attacking practices. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm a defender. And I said, who told you that? He goes, my dad. And do you know what? And I had to bite my lip. And I was like, look, honestly. I said, how old are you? And he said, he turned 8. So he said he was 8. And I was like, mate, you can play anywhere. Trust me. Do this now, and you'll see you can play anywhere. And I'll come back at 18 and tell me where you play, and I might listen to you. I said, well, no. And I find that I find it a bit sad, if I'm honest with you. I'm not knocking the dad, and he's got the best intentions for his kid, but you've got an 8-year-old kid whose mindset is I'm a defender. And he was a good attacker when he played in the practice. That's the other thing. I'm sure but
you don't get many players saying I don't like attacking practices. That's for sure.
Well, there was that as well. Yeah, that's even more heartbreaking, isn't it?
You get a lot saying I don't like defending practices. Don't like defending 1-on-1 or.
But you know what it'll be, Mark? It'll be the fact that he's probably done really well at being a defender in his little local team and stuff, and he's which is great for him, 100%. But let's not pigeonhole these kids when they're 8 years old. Exactly. Let's not do it when they're 14 years old. Let's give them a chance to at least get to a level physically and mentally where they're kind of who they're going to be, and then see what they can do. And I think part of that is also how games are played and tactical approaches to games. Yeah. And I know that's maybe an episode for a podcast, and so we're going to look at maybe, whether or not teams should have one way of playing, and if you look at the Spurs-Ajax game, how they changed the way they played to overcome Ajax very successfully and got the best out of a couple of players that they hadn't necessarily seen before. So it comes back to this whole rotation thing. You can't do that if you haven't got players that can adapt and change their game their style of play.
Yeah, agree. Went much more direct, right? I wouldn't call it long ball, but just a bit more direct.
Yeah, it wasn't potential, was it? It was just more. It was a different way of playing, wasn't it? And I think always play from the back and stuff. And it's great, but actually, you know what? What a wonderful tool if you could do 2 or 3 different things and pick your moments when to do it, and even better if the players could pick those moments.
Exactly. If they can recognise when they need to do it at the time. Totally agree.
But we won't start that conversation now, shall we?
Yes, yeah. Could be all afternoon.
Great question from Steve.
Yes.
Good debate.
Yep.
I hope there's been some learns in that and some stuff. A few rants this week, and I do apologise for that. But it was, obviously, it's emotive, and we're passionate about the subject.
Hopefully, you get the appropriate feedback.
On that note, please do continue the feedback. We've had some great stuff again. A bit through Twitter. It's a bit quiet on Twitter actually last week or two, but a bit through Twitter. Certainly, the emails are coming in, and we'll get back on that. We're looking at maybe doing partnership with other clubs, either in the UK or overseas, which I think would be a great thing. Those that share, so we can share some best practice from different areas. So if that's something you might be interested in, if you're a recreational grassroots club in the UK or overseas that want to hook up with another club and just share some ideas, maybe even get some games at some point. Yeah. We've done that before. So that's something to think about.
I think the other thing, it'd be great if we've had a lot of guests on that have been UK kind of centric guests. I think it'd be great if there's guests from other parts of the world that can come on and debate with us. Maybe there's different approaches in different countries that we haven't really kind of thought about. It'd be great to kind of listen and just have a chat about these things, right?
100%. That would be really good. Yeah. And also, if you think there's someone you'd want to hear on the podcast, we're happy to go and bang on doors and try and get people on here. We've had some cracking guests on so far. We've got some more lined up that are coming on, which we're delighted to have said yes to agreeing to be on the podcast.
We may struggle to get Guardiola and Klopp.
Well, he's thinking about it apparently. He said he's interested.
He's got a cup final to
after that, that's how he gets on. But if you want to reach out to us, then we can be found on Twitter at SoccerCoachCast and emailed info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. Enjoy your week, Mark.
Yeah, you
sunshine.
too.
We'll catch up next week.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.